Welcome to my space. Wait, no. Welcome to your space. Wait, no. Welcome to third space.
Excellent.
Yeah? You
That's
like
great.
that?
That's amazing. What a
Oh,
great
man.
opening.
Yeah, I think that's a keeper. I think that's what
What
we're gonna
is
do.
what is third space?
So it's not my space and it's not your space. It's this third space that's created. I mean, it's kind of we're being silly, but I really do like the idea of like I'm sitting here at my desk in my spare bedroom, and
Yeah, yeah.
you're I think on your
On
what
the
your
couch.
couch
Sitting on
and
the couch.
yeah, and so like the idea that we're not, but like my conversation, I won't remember this as the time I sat in the chair
Yeah.
at my desk, and you won't remember it as that couch conversation.
Probably
We'll think
not.
about the ideas. So third space is a conceptual space, not a physical one, and I just think that's really neat.
Yeah. I love third space.
I do too.
It's a good term. Kind of annoyed that other people, use it or have used it in other contexts, but
Yeah, well, they're just worse and lame and crappier.
yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Speaking
Okay,
of,
so
go ahead.
ah,
No,
no, go ahead.
no interruptions. I was just
Okay.
going to say, while we were talking about the podcast, a shout out to Michigan, by the way, because every time I log on to our podcast site, it shows that someone from Michigan downloads every episode. So awesome. Thanks, thanks, guy.
I really like that. Is there a way to obtain like an email or a way for
No.
them to reach out to us? And that's not something we want to do.
I mean,
We'll talk about that later, I guess.
We
but
can make an email address for.
I just like the idea of
podcast.
them being able to say, "Hey, cool." I don't know, or
I mean, yeah, that's nice, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have like 40 downloads and 14
Yeah, you're right.
episodes now. So, but
yeah, and it's more about us recording our conversations
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I've got a new segment idea that I'm pretty excited about, and I want to launch right into it. How do you feel about that?
I feel really good about that.
Okay, so it's a working title, but I'm gonna call it for now. What are your thoughts?
My
And
favorite.
So,
I love the title because I love giving my thoughts.
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to expose you to a new and maybe even strange idea or concept or fad or anything like that.
Okay.
And you're going to pretend to be an expert on it. You're either going to say, "Oh yeah, you know what? I just got that's my new hobby," or "You know what? I just happened to open this business," or whatever. You're going to own this concept without knowing much about it.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask you interview style questions as if you're here to enlighten me on this topic.
So this is kind of similar to the thing that we did with the sicknesses or psychological conditions a little bit.
It is a little bit like that, yeah. Which I have not listened to in so long that, like, yeah, it escapes me a bit.
Except this is more broad, and I still have to act, but but it's not quite as hard. It doesn't
And
sound
the
like it's quite as
gamification,
hard.
yeah, I'm not here to fool you or trick you. You'll see, I have the perfect. It's just one thing. We're not gonna like go through a dozen things. It's one thing, and it's one quick segment.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we'll just do it, and I think you'll hear what it is. It's not like I'm trying to fool you. Or you don't know what it is. You'll recognize it. You just have never have experienced or done it. I don't think, and you will act like you have.
All
Got
right,
it?
I'll give it my best shot. So
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on professional cuddling?
professional cuddling, I'm a fan. I watched the tournament last year. Amazing stuff.
Yeah. So, could you tell me a little bit more about like how do you define the parameters of professional cuddling?
Well, the first thing you should know is that it's an endurance sport. As they say, it's you've heard the phrase, something is a marathon and not a sprint. Cuddling is a marathon and not a sprint. That's for sure. You don't cuddle briefly. You cuddle for a long time. And these cuddling tournaments, they can go all night.
Okay. So, I'm gonna press pause for just a moment since we're figuring this out. Like, so is this how you're actually interpreting what professional cuddling is, or did you decide to take it in a funny direction? Because like my goal is I want you to pretend to be an expert in the area of what professional cuddling actually is, and it is not in any way like you've thrown me because it's creative, but it's not a sport.
Sorry, I'm just trying to act like an expert. This is what I do. I just try to act like an expert. I give expertise on whatever's in front of me. So
Well, all of my subsequent questions do not apply when you've turned it into a
okay,
competition.
all right. Then you must be talking about a different kind of professional cuddling. I was thinking tournaments. actually, there's this other thing I've heard of where it's kind of like therapy. So
Yes.
if you really need some emotional support, but it's physical, then you go in and you see a professional cuddler, and they just they cuddle your heart
Exactly. And so
and
you're
your
going
body.
to, for the sake of this interview, you've started your new business. It's booming you're both an active
Yeah, I
professional
have a.
cuddler and have employees and things like that. So that's how I'm going to frame some of these
It's fine.
questions.
It's perfect actually because I just got my my cuddle van all decked out. So I've got this. It's kind of a used minivan, and on the side, I don't. All these places are closed. I had to just use spray paint. Free cuddles, professional cuddles on the side. Spray paint. I drive it around, honk the horn a little bit.
So that's a good question about space. Like, where do these cuddles tend to take place?
Well, I mean, really, it's probably like it's probably somewhere in between a doctor's office, therapy office sort of thing, with a couch it's not really a couch, but it's kind of like a, what do they call those? Like a chase lounge, or like, what do they call the things that are like
Daybed looking things?
sort of something like that? Yeah, like that. Probably like that. Ranging from there to like a yoga studio. That's what I'm imagining. Like somewhere in between there.
So it's a brick and mortar place. It's not like a house call type place.
I wouldn't think. I would hope not. I mean, I would hope not. At least mine isn't going to be a house call place. That just seems a little bit too seedy for me.
Well, I mean,
I want it to be on the
massages
up and
make
up.
house calls, don't they? There are massage parlors, and then there are masseuses that do make house calls. So I suppose
That's true.
The profession of cuddling can take on many forms.
Yeah. The profession of cuddling can take on many forms. You're right. You're exactly right.
This is an absolutely real and emerging business that is growing with the public. Like the public interest is escalating. I mean, not
well,
particularly in this immediate time period because the whole 6 foot distance, whatever. But generally speaking, this is on the rise.
I can't say I'm surprised. I also can't say that I'm very pleased with that fact.
We can abandon the you pretending to be a professional, because if that doesn't work as a framing, but I like this whole idea of what are your thoughts on?
I like what are your thoughts on? Yeah, I kind of like pretending that, but that may be give it my best shot, and you can tell me if I'm right or not.
It's just funny because I was thinking roles reversed, and I was thinking I could probably BS a professional cuddle business right now, no matter what questions you throw at me. I mean, I did 15 minutes worth of research, but like in terms of like how much does a professional cuddler make, how long
much do they
session
make?
and stuff. So, what's your guess on that?
I look, the people who how do I not?
What are your thoughts on cuddling, really, Bennett?
Look, I really don't want to be sensitive, but I should be sensitive. I'm finding it really hard to accept that professional cuddling would actually be a worthwhile service, and then you wouldn't be better served, learning some sort of resilience, and so that you don't need cuddling. I mean, again, I have this mindset that
Not
this is
coddling, Bennett. Cuddling.
sorry. I have this mindset that it's essentially therapy, and it just seems like other methods of therapy might be more effective than cuddling. I don't know, but again, this is just off the cuff. So
You're not far off.
when I'm trying to place a value on it in terms of how much should a professional cuddler MD or cuddler whatever, doctor Feel.
Dr. Feel. Dr. Feel's good. Dr. Feel, though, and a feel. Like, that's
Yeah, I
really
know.
funny.
Yeah, Dr. Feel. Why don't you feel my body up against yours? When I try to value how much money that person should make, my lack of being impressed with this makes me want to say something lower. But when I think about the people who might be willing to pay for such a service, I think they'd be willing to pay for anything. So I'm just gonna throw out there $65,000. a year.
Oh, okay. This was a per hour rate.
Per hour rate, that's harder. I would say
What do you think an hour of cuddling is worth?
$60.
Yeah,
$65.
you can make around $80, and that's the thing about a session. A session lasts between 90 minutes and 3 hours, and can cost as much as $80 an hour. So that's strange that the number 80, and then the you would think if it's a business, I don't know, but it's not a salaried thing. I just don't think there's going to be a salaried professional
Yeah,
cuddler.
you're
It's
right.
probably like an Uber driver and a cuddle. Not to say that well, I am saying it doesn't require.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
You do
Would
get
be-
certified apparently. One of the businesses is called Certified Cuddlers, and as far as like what are they
Who
trying?
certifies them?
That's what I want to know. What sort of training program? I mean, yeah. Well, and like the question too is what is the goal? And I think you were touching on the idea of therapy, and it's to provide people a safe space to feel respected, accepted, and worthy for exactly who they are. And then they do that through one-on-one, fully clothed, platonic cuddle
No
sessions.
boners allowed.
It utilizes clear rules, consent, and an ongoing open communication from both sides.
Yeah.
And so all of these questions, like, so this is where I was like saying, hey, tell me more about consent. That's how I was visualizing, like, what do you think consent looks like? Or tell me more about consent. And you just BS your way through what consent means in these.
Sure.
Like with the spouse, like if you're not single, what do or if you are single, or no, excuse me, if you're not single, do you have to have your girlfriend or boyfriend consent to this, or like will they still just cuddle with you anyway? And
I mean,
you can imagine
from a business standpoint, if they're framing it like therapy, they'll cuddle with you anyway. I mean, from a moral standpoint, obviously, you shouldn't go to a professional cuddler and cuddle with someone else without your boyfriend or girlfriend saying that's cool with me.
Right. Well, I am a little bit suspicious of the notion of platonic cuddles. And
Sure.
by the way, I'm guessing there's not a lot of I mean, I imagine their clientele is primarily single people, right? Like part of a relationship is cuddling, I think. I mean, maybe I'm being too bold there, but like I'm just gonna guess their client base is yeah, single. And probably I would just like to see the attractiveness if we could somehow quantify that objectively. And I'm sounding so mean here, but I imagine it's lonely people primarily, ones that need to feel respect.
Yeah,
So,
and I imagine the professional cuddlers are all very attractive women.
I think I'm going to guess. I've not done a deep dive or anything on this, but like that it is hippies.
Yeah.
Ranging and good looks.
Oh, so you're saying they're not attractive women.
No, I'm saying like
That's a counter to my point.
No, it's not a count. It's a counter to your position that there's going to be an expectation of looks just probably doesn't play into it. I imagine just a whole range. I imagine a particular personality type and not a particular
I imagine
attractive type.
I see what you're saying with the personality type, but like, let's imagine that you have that hippie personality type and you open your cuddling business and you're just not that attractive. Meanwhile, Deborah next door
Yeah.
is really attractive and she decides
Next
to
door
open
Deborah.
next door Deborah, and she that's the name of her business, by the way.
Yeah.
Next door Deborah, professional cuddler. Boners allowed.
Oh man! If you
Yeah, but
match with someone on a dating site and they're a professional cuddler, would that be a red flag?
Instant swipe left. Get
Yeah.
rid of them. But yeah, she opens hers next door and she's hot. Like, who's gonna get more business? You know, like even if you're like you're depressed, maybe you recently broke up and you just feel like you need some physical cuddle and comfort, and you're really down and you're into all of that kind of whatever, however they advertise that. Who are you gonna choose? You gonna choose like overweight hippie dude, or you're gonna choose Dr. Deb with the smoking hot next door bod?
Well, that's
And she allows boners, so
by necessity, this is a physical choice, and we're making a decision based on like physical qualities, and so who we find more attractive is going to be if we want to exchange physical touch with someone, the more attractive person is undoubtedly going to do more business and be more
Right.
successful in that. Now, we're assuming this sort of economy of professional cuddling in which there's competition. I think it would be such a
Yeah.
niche market. There'd be one, but even one business would, I think you would just see your professional cuddlers, the attractive ones, do way, way better.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just they're recurring customers.
I mean,
It'd be very clear.
this
It's
is this,
obvious. It's so obvious. It's boring to even say.
right. I mean, it's the same outcome that you would see in a field like modeling or like other
Anything predicated on
anything.
looks. I mean, that is
Yeah,
no,
anything
well, it's not
looks.
predicated on looks. It's predicated on physical. It's a physical arena, and that modeling would probably say the same thing about it's about clothes and how they wear the clothes, but it ends up being about beauty because we associate the aesthetic and the physical. They're
Well,
just so linked.
now, if I were going to try to push back on that idea, I would say that it's really not about the way they look. It's about the emotional support that they can lend. Have you ever like hugged your grandma and it's maybe your grandma is really overweight and stuff, but like it's just the warmest, softest, most comforting hug. It's a hug filled with love. You don't get a boner
Okay.
when your grandma hugs you.
Okay, you're
but
right. There's
it
a
feels
maternal
good.
quality or
Yeah.
grand maternal quality.
There you go. Grand maternal quality.
I okay, I can buy, and even like a masseuse. Like, I mean, if I would rather, I'm not particular. I'm not the person to really ask. I'm not comfortable with massages. I've had one in my life, but like, I suppose I'd rather have the really, really professional, like, person. I'd rather have who might not be attractive than someone who's terrible at their job, but they're professional.
Sure.
And so if it truly, but I'm more suspicious about. They call it platonic cuddle sessions. I just feel like this is blurring the lines. Like, could you call them platonic sex workers who, because it's not about love. It's a friendly business
Sure.
exchange. Like at what point can you just say no? Like cuddle has crossed the zone to intimacy reserved for romantic partners to me. I mean, obviously there's the high school girl who puts her feet in the guy's lap and like he flirts and they cuddle up but it's a bold claim. I'm just thinking about platonic cuddle as almost oxymoronic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so torn because like, and that may be surprising to you. Like,
Are you saying that when you and I are together and we're cuddled up on the couch, you're saying that has
I
is
think it's
just pure
platonic.
friendship?
I say it's
Oh,
platonic. I don't
well,
know
we
what
have something to unpack.
I don't know what
We have
your feelings are on the matter. No, I mean, so let's see if I can get my thoughts straight on this. Like, if I had a girlfriend and she said, this weekend I'm going to hang out with this guy I used to be roommates with in college. We're just probably gonna hang out and do some platonic cuddling. Whoa, hold on, nope. Like no such thing as platonic cuddling. Like you can't, that's not happening.
Especially at the intended purpose, we're going to go cuddle. That's weird.
Yeah.
We're getting together. What are you going to do? Cuddle.
But
In fact,
but
there's no other arrangement of cuddling that always takes place organically during a movie. Dinner. You snuggle up, a conversation, a walk in the park, and you sit on the bench. You don't say like, "Let's go cuddle." What do you want to do tonight? I don't think we should cuddle.
let's cuddle.
I mean, you could even say, "Let's stay in and cuddle," but what you're saying is a movie or take out and take it home, and that's you just don't. Cuddle's not the end objective, so it's strange to have a business. It'd be almost a fun intellectual exercise to what are other businesses that are usually side products, but this is a whole establishment.
Right.
Anyway, but I interrupted your thoughts on cuddling.
I mean, from
and its platonic nature.
if like I was saying, my girlfriend wanted to go platonically cuddle, I would be like, that's nonsense. But if it's a person like the situation I presented, a person who maybe just got out of a relationship, just got broken up, just got dumped or something, and they're feeling really sad and they want maybe they don't have any really cuddly grandmas around and they just want they want to feel close to someone. I don't know. I can see someone being soothed by that interaction. Like I can see that, and that doesn't mean you have to be romantically involved with the professional cuddler or or even want to be romantically involved with a professional cuddler. I don't know. I can just see it working for some people.
I think it absolutely, there's something to be said that physical touch impacts our emotional state is 100% true.
Well,
And
that's
so
definitely true. Yeah.
that's the premise of this, and that even cuddling, define cuddling, impacts our emotional state. But I'm worried that this sort of monetizing of cuddling is
Yeah.
antithetical to the very nature of it. The idea of cuddling
Well,
is
yeah.
to exchange
Intimacy.
the reason physical touch impacts us emotionally. Like that's what you want to unpack. Why? And I think it's an expression of intimacy. And
Right.
so to be now like I'll pay you money, I'll give you cuddles.
Sure.
It robs, and in
Right.
fact, that's why the very nature of a strip club
Or prostitution. Yeah.
prostitution, exchange of goods and services for something that is otherwise reserved for an intimate exchange, is so off-putting.
And
I don't even like
damaging, too,
It's
so.
damage. Well, I don't even like. I'm not opposed to a waiter or waitress being a little bit flirty. Like I get it, right? Like I get why they do that. So I'm not judging people who use flirtation skills to up their tips. But if something like a Hooters, which is predicated on positioning, where they are basically hired to come in and be flirty and present themselves in a particular available way, they're like that again takes an intimate idea and bastardizes it to the extent that I guess the word repulsed works. I'm repulsed. I can't. I'm deeply uncomfortable. I would be so deeply uncomfortable working or and trying to enjoy a cuddle session. Like I think it'd be hilarious to do a video blog of like you and me going to a professional cuddling store, and you'd be the funny one. You don't even.
I don't like touching anyone or anyone touching me. Like really,
We'd both be supremely uncomfortable.
like
Though.
even the situation I presented about hugging my grandma. Like I actually don't like to hug my grandmas. I do it because it's expected of me.
Right. It's part of the cultural fabric, and you understand that other people feel that way.
Right, and my grandmas like it, so I'll hug my grandmas because they like it, and I want to give them that hugging, comforty feeling. And of course, in a relationship, that's completely not. That's the only area. And again, this speaks to your intimacy point because in a relationship, physical touch is a sign of intimacy, and that's something I want to encourage. But otherwise, no, don't touch me.
The reason I'm even a little bit judgmental of someone who would want to participate, I'm not judging the fact that they're feeling lonely. That doesn't look. People are lonely. We've all been there, kind of thing. And I'm not judging the fact. The reason I actually judge them is because this might be a fault of this might be on me, but they are fooling themselves. The reason it works is because they're either too stupid or intentionally fooling themselves that this is meaningful.
Sure.
And that bothers me. So my judgment comes in the fact that they are able to say, I give stranger money, they give me intimacy, and it works. It works for you? Are you kidding? What kind of person are you that you can either willfully turn it off or are too stupid to have it present where you recognize that this exchange is not intimate and not actually meaningful?
Sure. Well, I imagine that there have been many, many cases of, some guy going to a strip club or something and buying lap dances or whatnot, and falling in love with the stripper,
or believing the stripper's into them. Yeah,
exactly.
that's the whole joke.
And this is a one-way interaction. The stripper is just trying to make money, pure and simple, and he is getting feels.
Right. And it's because you're intertwining the intimate. So his
definitely.
brain is going, but it's just a competition. It doesn't work for him.
Right. And so I imagine with the cuddling, the same kind of situation could develop probably to a lesser extreme, just because cuddling is less extreme than stripping, but it could still develop, I think.
But even the culture, I'm imagining, so you can imagine the culture of a strip club and the culture of a cuddling environment, and the cuddling environment might even be positioned to seem, because it's less extreme, it's more unassuming, so it might, in weird ways, you're cuddling with someone and you're probably talking and sharing, and imagine it's not just silent cuddling. So I bet that issue is amplified. I bet more crushes develop, and it might even be a two-way street, because even strippers, like sometimes they like when you're It's that fake it till you make it phenomenon. If you're just doing the what is intimate, even if in trying to treat it as not intimate, it just can be blurry. So I believe you could develop feelings by operating
Oh, definitely. I mean,
intimately.
that's the
So,
thing that they say, that's so subversive is if you want to corrupt someone's morals, then make them say things they don't believe, because just saying it begins to corrupt you. That's why, being dishonest or lying is so bad, because the more you allow yourself to speak something that you don't believe, the more you slowly twist to believing it. And I think the same can be said for physical actions as well.
yeah, that's interesting. I don't think it would apply at at gunpoint. Like if someone's say they're a Christian and you have a gun in your head and say I don't believe in God. And you say okay,
Sure.
I don't believe in God. It had almost zero effect, right? It saved your life, whatever. But I mean, you could debate like what the correct action should you abandon your
Yeah,
faith,
but
but that's different. But you don't all of a sudden actually not believe in
no,
God.
no, no, no. It's a
But
gradual thing. Imagine some oppressive regime that makes people sign, statements that say, I disavow, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. And
right.
you have to do this repeatedly over time. Your resistance to agreeing with the oppressive regime is going to go down.
Or even a Christian who goes to like maybe a non-Christian environment, a schooling environment, maybe an academic liberal arts school and everyone around, so they don't talk about God. And I didn't mean to make some religious point, but like for a long, or maybe they even dump on classic or traditional Christianity, and that person kind of wants to fit in and participates a bit, but even though they continue going to church or whatever, adhering to their religion, over the years, that could have a real effect on their relationship with Christianity or God or all of that, because they've maybe even adopted some of the views or said, yeah, well, I don't believe this, and this in order to fit in. So whether it's a regime or a significant cultural immersion in a different culture, I think who we're around can reflect how we think and feel, because it's what we
Definitely.
end up saying.
Yeah, for sure.
That makes sense.
Yes. On the topic of physical intimacy, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I didn't mention it to you off podcast. But I actually watched the movie Her that you recommended to me a long time ago.
Yes, it's been a while. What were your
It's been a
thoughts?
long time. It's got stars what's his name? Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, he's really good. He was the Joker, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's a movie. It's a movie about. It's set in the future, and they develop an operating system that is an artificial intelligence, and it's
Like a Siri or something, right?
yeah, like Siri, and it's really good. It's a really high quality artificial intelligence, and he's kind of this lonely dude. He buys this operating system, and then he makes it a woman, and
And he's not a complete loser, right? He's not like
no,
some
no, he's not a complete loser. He's
just a
weird.
loner.
The movie is quirky.
Quirky,
It's
yes.
quirky and weird. He's not positioned as a loser, but he's also not positioned as like
a winner.
yeah, a winner either. So, but yeah, the AI starts to develop a personality and interacts really well with him, and they have good chemistry, as much as you can say but that's what the movie is really about, is investigating the interaction, the hypothetical interaction between a human and an AI. And
Yeah.
one of the key conflicts in the movie is the fact that the AI doesn't have a physical body, and how that impacts their relationship. And
Doesn't
I thought that
intimacy
was
require a two-way street? Like, isn't that like is that a precursor to real intimacy?
I thought that was one of the interesting point. I thought the movie had a lot of interesting questions. I thought it was a good movie. I had a couple of issues with it, but overall very interesting, and it deals with this issue of physical intimacy in some way. So I would recommend watching it, and I thank you for recommending it to me. I enjoyed it.
My criticism of this is the same. It's not if someone if we get into a state where people are involved in relationships with machines. I mean, so many people go, "Oh, that's horrible and that's terrible," and they balk and they judge and they do all of this. I also do feel there's something about about that really deeply bothers me. And again, it's not the fact that someone's lonely. I'm not mad at them for trying to fit in and trying to belong. Um, I'm disappointed that they can fool themselves into believing. This is obviously my opinion shining through heavily, but
Sure.
like that they can believe, suspend their disbelief to the point that like they're not investing in another person, and they're not like helping anyone else. It's just it's all one way. There's no one
Isn't
on the other end.
isn't
And
this the
that
concept of waifu? The when people will form a crush on like an anime character or something, and they say that's my waifu, and they
I'm not familiar with this. That's a cool.
really
That's a an interesting idea. Like
yeah, and they essentially swear off 3D women.
real women.
Yeah, 3D,
Yeah, they're intentionally not saying real. All right.
2D only.
Well, that's the
That's
I
the
guess that's
same
the
idea.
counter to my argument. Someone would say you're saying it's not real, like it because it's not a mutual exchange. But if the artificial intelligence is sophisticated enough, it like what does it mean to be alive? Like because if you had to consider like one of the points in the movie I recall is that well it's not like the artificial intelligence just agrees with you and gives you everything you want. You have to treat this form. You have to negotiate, make concessions. There are arguments. Like it's a legitimate relationship in terms of give and take, because the artificial intelligence has a complicated personality. And I'm using loaded terms, but it's still not a person. Like, what does it mean to be living? Like, yeah, it can resemble living. It can be complicated, but it's not another. Like, I guess it
Well,
gets to
that's
the soul concept. Like, it doesn't have a soul, and
well,
so
that's actually another point in the movie, and I guess if you it's not really spoiler territory. I guess if you don't want to hear too much about it, then maybe fast forward a little bit. But like the the question of what does it mean to be conscious or to be a person kind of comes up in the movie, and like there comes a point when the AI supersedes what
that's right.
what
I
the human
forgot
guy
that.
is capable of, and like that's kind of interesting. That's kind of an interesting thing. Actually, one of my criticisms of the movie was that you mentioned the point about the AI having a real personality and there being arguments and all of that stuff. That's actually one of my criticisms of the movie is that I was annoyed that the AI very quickly became an annoying girlfriend. Like really quickly became super annoying in a way that like I would have just broken up with that AI. And the problem in the movie is that if it's an AI, then any manufacturer of this operating system is going to make it modifiable. And like if my AI girlfriend started acting like the AI girl in the movie, I would have been like logging into that system and be like, all right, changing these parameters, like drop that neuroticism, drop that emotionality down a little bit, like tweak this stuff, because like it felt like the movie really, really wanted you to fall in love with the AI girl. Really, 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 really wanted you to, was pushing that super hard, and it failed for me.
I don't recall feeling emotional about the AI. It's been granted years since I've seen it,
Yeah.
but I don't recall it being a heavy push. Even I didn't think
Oh,
that, but it makes sense that the idea is
it
at
was
least
heavy. It was a heavy push to
I
try to
thought the
get you.
idea was to make you not be repulsed by his relationship, knowing that most people would go, "This is gross." To sort of understand, so it wasn't a push for us to fall in love with the AI, but for us to understand his relationship with her, like for us to go, "I can see why this particular man, is in this
Yeah,
relationship."
fair enough. You could draw a parallel between those two
Yeah, they could
arguments. I think.
overlap, and the scenes could, yeah.
But yeah, I found myself being kind of like, it's time to end this relationship. Like, it's time to get out of this. But my point is that if it's an AI and he can just log into the computer, then why wouldn't he just modify things? Or like the whole plot point about her expanding beyond his capabilities. Like the movie tries to portray it as if the AI cares for him just as much as he cares for the AI. And if that were true, then why wouldn't I mean, the AI could self-limit or delete stuff. I mean, the movie didn't explore all of the possibilities of
Right.
what an AI relationship could entail. I get that they had to, make certain decisions of what to put in the movie and what message they wanted to give.
Yeah, because even the
Overall,
question of
really, really enjoyable. Still, I love how quirky it was, and the visual design was actually pretty good too.
and what does it mean for a robot or an AI to care? That's such a strange concept. Like,
Sure.
I mean, what if it can resemble caring 100%? That's the thing. AI can get smart enough to fool us into behaving just like a human would. So if it can
Well,
present as human and it can present as caring, is that any different from being human or caring?
Well, like I don't claim to be an expert on AI, but uh, I'm working on a master's degree and I've taken AI courses, and my experience thus far is that AI is hilariously dumb. Like it's way more dumb than people think. People think AI is amazing and we're on the cutting edge of like these sorts of human AI interactions. Nope. Nope, we're really far. Like AI is good in narrowly defined parameters that we really polish over time, but we're far, far away from something like what this movie presents.
So this is I'm talking out of my ass here, but like they'll talk about online courses run by a professor, but and the kids at the end will be asked like, "How was the professor?" And it turns out the professor was an AI machine, emailing them back and forth, and most could not tell, like 80, 90%. Are you saying the reason that's convincing is because it's narrowly defined parameters,
Yes.
specific questions, and it's been refined over a long time, not because it's actually just like it, because within the frame of a course, like, yeah, you can probably over the years predict within reason how to respond and to students because that's
Yes.
narrow.
Well, natural language processing, which is what that is somewhat impressive. Like you can ask an AI that has been trained up on the English language. You can ask it a question, and it will respond with something that follows the rules of grammar and might make some kind of sense if it's in a narrowly defined arena. Like for example, in the class that I'm taking, or the class that I've taken before, they trained up an AI on the syllabus and the course documents, and they had us ask the AI questions, and it could answer the questions if they were found in those course documents. But if I asked the AI something like, "Hey, AI, what's the nearest professional cuddler to me?" Or some, well, what are your thoughts, AI, on professional cuddling? I'm not going to get a response from that. It doesn't know what that is. It doesn't probably even have the word cuddling in its vocabulary.
Right. Okay.
Like
I
that's the misconception is that AIs are smart. They're not. They're actually extraordinarily dumb, but they can think. I use that term very loosely. They can think so fast that they can connect all the different probabilities between, okay, the word and comes before and after this word. They can think about all of those connections so fast, and they can crunch the numbers to figure out, okay, here's the words here's the words that were input to my equation. Here's the most likely words that need to be output, and then output them.
So I think part of the problem is the illusion of well, there's the sheer mass of different type or quantity, I should say, of different types of artificial intelligence. So there's artificial intelligence that will do something and it will do it well. Like Google will turn on my lights and follow these commands and do it very well. And then maybe, like you said, a professor could pretend to be a professor or what. And since there's thousands of these AI things going around, we in our brain we lump AI together and we think it can do anything. We think of it
Yeah,
as
yeah.
inner working and
One
being
thing, yeah.
one magical beast of a machine, and they're all individually able to do their narrow commands well, and that makes us think they're sophisticated. But they're fairly well run machines, but they are narrow and not
Yep.
sophisticated.
That's right. I mean, and I don't mean to convey with my negativity that it's not impressive or that I don't like it. I'm taking courses in it because I find it fascinating, and really like the idea of AI. And man, some of the stuff it can do is impressive, but it's just another tool. It's not a human-like intelligence on the other end. And there are people out there Elon Musk and others who think that we're on the brink of like the singularity, and we're gonna make a general intelligence AI that's gonna be able to manage all this stuff, and maybe, but from what I've seen, and I'm not by no means an expert, we're not close.
So you feel, what do you think? Like Elon Musk is not a dummy, is he? Is he just
No, 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 he's
enjoying a
certainly
conspiracy
not
theory?
a dummy.
So there's lots of, or aren't there a lot of smart people who think we're on the brink? I'm
Sure,
speaking
there
so
are.
far out of my comfort zone
There
that
are a
I,
lot of people who think that we are really close to crazy, singularity style stuff. And there are lots of really smart people who don't. So there's smart people on both ends of that matter. But again, this is fortune telling, and we only have certain evidence to go by. I tend to think that it's pretty far off, if ever.
again, I guess I think of all the disparate AI things out there, and if you just imagine them almost like a stars in the universe, but they're all separated. But if you could just look at this sky and see a web and see it all connected, then you'd see like seeing the singularity seems so close, but those stars are so far apart. If that makes sense, like imagining the web that would connect it all would
Well,
seem so conceivable, but it's obvious that that's not the case.
right. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are tons of analogies we could come
Yeah,
up
I don't
with,
know.
but like,
That's a
you know,
strange thought.
we had like in old sci-fi movies, we had droids and robots, and back in the 40s or 50s or something, then I imagine there were these really legitimately smart scientists, roboticists that were thinking, and just we're right on the edge of having robotic butlers and maids in every home. I'm sure there were people with ideas like that,
Right, right.
but the fact that we can make a prosthetic hand that can grasp really well, and we can make bipedal robots like Boston Dynamics people. Just because we can do that doesn't mean all those stars will come together and we'll have robotic butlers in every home
Yeah.
soon. So
Yeah.
subject shift to a brief subject. I've been playing a new video game the last couple of days that is different than any video game that I've ever played before.
Really?
It's called La Mulana,
Okay.
and it's a 2D game, kind of with a 16-bit, similar to a Super Nintendo style
Okay.
to it. And its pitch is that it is one of the most difficult games there is. And so far that's turning out to be true. It's extremely difficult. The genre of the game is Metroidvania, which you're probably not familiar with the term.
I'm
But
familiar with Metroid Prime and Transylvania or some Vania.
Castlevania.
Castlevania. Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So Metroid is the series. Metroid and Castlevania, it's a portmanteau of those two words, Metroidvania. These are 2D games, generally, where the map is relatively open and game progresses by you traveling to the only place you can, getting a power-up, and now that you've got that power-up, new areas are open to you. Maybe the power-up's a double jump. Now you can jump over that cliff that you saw a while back, and you continually get power-ups and venture through the same interconnected spaces, and usually you fight bosses, and so there's exploration to it, and it's not level-based like a Super Mario game.
It's not
would
left
be.
to right, I guess.
Yeah, right. You can
Yeah.
go left, right, up, down, all that stuff. So this game is a Metroidvania in that sense, but even more than that, it's a puzzle game. Everywhere in this game are riddles, and like there's these little tablets, and they say when you read them, you're like, what am I looking at? Like this doesn't. It's just like the setting of the game is you're an archaeologist. You're basically Indiana Jones. You have a whip and you have a hat, and you're delving into ruins. And there are all these tablets that you find that have riddles on them, and they don't make any sense. And like you actually have to keep a notepad and paper and write down this stuff so that you can come back to it later. And then you have to figure out the riddles and then implement it in the game. And it's really like the puzzles are hard. The Metroidvania style has a little bit of difficulty inherent in it, and worst of all of that I count as positive. But my main criticism so far in the game is that it controls horribly. It's so bad. The
Well,
controls
that's
are
a big deal.
terrible.
Bad controls can really ruin a game, I feel.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, look, granted, I've played maybe 3 or 4 areas of the game, so I'm still sort of in
Do
the
you mean that they're
beginning.
not intuitive or they're not responsive?
They're not responsive. They like you know when you play like a Mario game and you make Mario jump in the air. Let's say you're running to the right, you're running forward, and you jump. Mario he jumps in an arc, and it's very predictable. And
Right.
if you jump in the air and then press left, Mario, counter to the laws of physics, kind of stops in the air and starts to go back the other direction.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, this game doesn't do that. So you can't like if you're standing still and you press jump, you just jump up and down in the air. If you walk to off of a cliff, you just walk off of a cliff. You fall straight down and you can't move left and right. The only thing you can do is fall straight down.
That's
And
annoying, actually.
yeah, and if you're moving to the left or right and you jump, you can't stop in midair and go back the other direction. So once you leave the ground, like that's it. Like you're going where you're going.
Well, okay, so I mean, these
And
details are fine, but I'm more curious. You led with "I'm playing a game unlike any other," and you've proceeded to pretty much describe it.
Because it's the puzzle aspects are unlike anything else. Like the things that you're expected to solve and know are like actually really obscure and hard to figure out. Like there are all of these references to like Egyptian gods and statues in the background, and yeah, like I have my notebook here. Let me just read. I'll read you some of the notes that I jotted down. Um, I did. I
When you
wrote
said
them
notebook, I thought you meant within the gameplay, like it was a
no,
saved. You
on a
mean
piece of paper.
it's
Like
actually crazy enough that you need a physical notebook.
yeah. So, and I wrote them in shorthand, so they're kind of spruced up to fit in the style of the story. But like, oh, the path of gazing faces leads to the heavenly corridor, and then I don't. In my notes, I got dot 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 hidden floor. So I don't know what it was saying there. Oh, Abuto, G, Ribu, and Sakit hoped for the mother. So there you go.
Do you know any of those people or things?
Nope. I mean, not other than what you read on the tablets. Eventually, when you read enough things and discover enough things, you can start to put the pieces together and figure it out.
If this is encouraging you to write stuff down in a journal, is it also encouraging you to, I mean, this is interesting to take video game experience to real life where you're actually writing something physically. And is it encouraging you to go Google those names and see what you can learn about those maybe prehistoric gods? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like
No.
it's not. Okay.
No, it's making me want to solve the puzzles and beat the game.
Well, right, but I meant is the intention that the game is
I don't
trying
think
to
so.
get you to go
No.
outside of okay.
I don't think that's the intention of the game at all. I think the intention of the game is to kind of counter the trend that we've seen of games just being really easy.
This sounds like a bit silly in the other direction though.
Yeah, it may be a little too far in the other direction. I mean, like, I like difficult games. Before this game, I would say, and I'm not done with this game yet, but from all I've read, it only gets harder. I just played a boss yesterday or I just beat a boss today that probably took me 65 tries, and it's only like the third boss in the game. So, it was
Are you having
maddening.
fun? Are you feeling rewarded?
At
Is
first-
it a net benefit to play?
Yeah, I think it is. At first, I was a little frustrated, mostly by the controls, and there's an acclimation period you have to go to with any video game where you just get used to the rules that it imposes on you, and once you accept the limitations of the game and start to work within those limitations and defeat challenges, games pretty much inevitably get more fun. I've certainly played unfun games before. This one, I think I've gotten past the frustrating parts of the controls and can deal with it going forward. Although, gosh, there's some really annoying things in it. But the exploration and the puzzles, I actually really enjoy. I like the difficulty of that. Before I played this game, the most difficult game I played was probably maybe Hollow Knight, another Metroidvania. But that game I thought had really good fluid controls and the challenge was just in tight timing and memorizing the boss patterns.
Right, and that's the typical. That's the rub of most video games.
Yeah, this game, like La Mulana, has some. It does have some cheap shots. Like there are some times when there will be a trap, and like there's a pedestal, like Indiana Jones, and you have to put a weight on it, and it sinks down. And when you do that, you just get hit by some spikes or something, and you would have had no way to know. It just hits you, and you're like, well, you got me. It's a game where you're meant to die over and over again, and then figure out how
That's
to
how
navigate
you
the rooms.
learned. Yeah.
That's how you learn.
How many?
That can work, but you have to prepare yourself for that kind of gameplay.
So how many hours would you say you've invested?
Right now, only about 6 hours, so not that far.
Because it's interesting. It could be a long game because it takes a long time to complete what actually content wise isn't that long, right? Potentially, like
Could be.
if
Yeah.
you have bosses that take 65 tries each, they could be
Right.
4 bosses, and you still have a lot of hours invested in the game. So it's like almost a weird thing to say, oh, it's a 100-hour game. Yeah, but it's got the content of some games that are only 12 hours or something like that.
Yeah, that is interesting. They say that the game provides more than 40 hours of gameplay, but again, all those estimates are always a little
Yeah,
fuzzy.
hours of gameplay has always weirded me out because you're controlling the speed. Now, I mean, it's remarkable that people move through games when averaged out at a very similar pace, I would imagine, because you're not just standing there as a character looking at nothing, and if you're gonna move from A to B, you're gonna typically, like, if there's a way to sprint, you're gonna probably sprint instead of just moseying your character along, So
Yeah, I would guess that the shorter the game duration on average, the smaller the standard deviation is as well. Daniel does science. Daniel doesn't know what standard deviation is. But
oh, that makes sense.
like, if I played a game that took me 100 hours, then I would expect that I'm a completionist, so I would expect that the normal range of game times is something like 60 hour, maybe 50 hours to 120 hours, something like that. But if I played a game and beat it in 10 hours, I would expect that the range is something like 8 hours to 12 hours or something, like
Right.
the deviation, the distance between the average and the endpoints is smaller for a shorter game.
Yeah, that would have. Yeah, that just plays out naturally. I feel like
Yeah, you're probably right.
logically, anyway.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I didn't want to talk a long time about La Mulana. I just
don't know what it's
I'm
like
in the
to
midst of
listen
it.
to video game talk. Like, you and I talk video games quite a bit, but like,
Probably not that interesting.
I imagine it's not.
Talking about a specific one. If we
the
if we
subject of video games in E3 or something, I think that's fair
Yeah,
play. But
that's-
if to get into the minutia of like a level or an update on a video game is just not particularly compelling, I don't think.
I do have I mentioned Daniel does science. I do want to actually do Daniel does
Oh
science.
boy. Okay, hit me with it. My brain
but
is tired today.
That's
but
okay.
let's do it.
I didn't originally intend for this to be Daniel does science, but it just fits so perfectly. Really, I'll just we'll see what you know, and and then I'll talk about it a little bit. So, with all of this social distancing stuff, maybe this fits a little bit more. But I want to know if you know how body odor works.
Ooh. Okay, so I guess the simplest, or the cultural understanding we have, the completely unscientific, is that when you don't wash, you get dirty, and dirty people smell.
Okay.
But my assumption is you're not dirty after, say, you play a sport or something. You sweat, your body opens up and sweats. But I don't think it's just like it's all the gross smell from the inside secreting out. I think that's just not right. My
Okay.
guess is that there's like tiny bacteria that when the moisture kind of comes out, it's like watering this we all have bacteria all over us all the time. I don't even know if that's really true, but it seems like plausible that we all have this stuff on us, like little micro living bullshit.
Yeah.
and and that when you sweat, it waters, essentially waters it, and creates this environment for those to grow. And those are, that's where odor comes from, is that bacteria under your armpit. That's why more moist areas emit grosser smells, I suppose. And that's why you can smell even after you've showered and then you go do a workout. You haven't gotten dirty. You've just watered your bacteria ridden self or clad self.
Wow,
There's my thoughts.
Yeah, you're a regular old scientist. A lot of that is really good. So let me ask you this before I confirm how much you got right or not. Why does deodorant work? And if what you're saying is true and we're covered with bacteria, obviously our arms and legs can sweat. Why don't we put deodorant on our arms and legs? Why do we only put it under our arms?
Well, I got to distinguish between deodorant and antiperspirant, because if you do just buy deodorant, you tend to just sweat as much as anyone, or like it only sort of perfumes. I think this is my simplified understanding. I don't have much science here, but a deodorant pretty much perfumes your odor. It masks, and an antiperspirant prevents the sweating, like anti-sweat, essentially. Sure. And I know that the thing about antiperspirant and some of the caution we have is that there's some active ingredients like aluminum, which could be bad and cause cancer. I don't know. I don't know enough, but there's this sort of, at least cultural mythos around it causing cancer or making you have early developed brain disease, and that's why there's a push for these natural ingredients. But I've tried natural deodorants and they suck, because they're just deodorants, they're not antiperspirants. You sweat still like crazy, right. And honestly, it does seem to me just like a little good smell. Like I smell the stick and it smells just as good, and you put it on and it can even apply similarly. But the second you start sweating, if you really smell your nose, like if you really put it up in there, give it a good whiff, it just smells kind of like after someone takes a poop and you spray the room. You get both, and it's not like, oh, this is just a wonderful Febreze. No, it's like, ugh, weird Febreze poop. And so that's what it seems like to me.
So yeah, you're distinguishing between deodorant and antiperspirant is something that I want to briefly touch on a little bit. But the question I was asking is,
why not do our legs or something?
So, yeah, right. If your supposition is we have bacteria all over our bodies and sweating waters the bacteria, then why does wearing antiperspirant, which I guess you would admit does have some effect on body odor, right?
It seems to work a lot better. Yeah. So
why do we only put it under our arms? Or at least that's what I do anyway. I guess maybe there's some people that give themselves a rub down, but
yeah,
we put it under our arms and it tends to eliminate body odor. So
yeah,
what's the deal with
I
that?
guess it's just the collection zones. That's why, like, we think about what smells. It's the crotch area, the pits, and the feet, right? Because they're in moist environments. And so, yes, your legs and arms, you can sweat anywhere. Actually, I don't know that. Like, do your ears sweat? Probably not. Your palms, I'm pretty sure, don't sweat. And then, of course, they do. Sweaty palms. Why would I say that? Why
palms
would I
are
say
sweaty.
that?
Knees,
yeah, I know. I feel
spaghetti. Mom's spaghetti.
I feel really stupid for saying that, but there's a couple of spots. What I was thinking is your body's covered in hair, right? Mm-hmm. Like even, and your palms are not. That's kind of, I was confusing two things. But you don't sweat somewhere, I'm sure. But those are just like, it's reasonable to think we would. It's more of a cultural thing. Like it would just take a long time, and it doesn't actually add to the smell because those aren't like it just seems to me the pits and crotch are like the bacteria gathering or zones because they're more moist, and like they are often dark, like darker areas. You have clothes covering it up and that sort of thing.
All right, so you're actually, you've done a really good job at this actually. So the odor does come from bacteria. You know, a lot of people probably have the misconception that your sweat stinks, but sweat is generally odorless. So it's the sweat that, say your arm sweats or something, that comes from your eccrine glands, ECCRINE, eccrine. And the sweat that comes from those glands is mostly just electrolytes and water. It doesn't smell. But the thing that you're not quite caught onto, and I wouldn't have expected you to know this, is that you also have a different kind of glands called apocrine, or apocrine. Gosh, I can't speak. Apocrine glands, and they are located in your underarms and in your groin, on your palms, and on your feet. And they don't just secrete electrolytes and water; they also secrete fatty acids and proteins, and that's what the bacteria eat. So the bacteria don't eat electrolytes and water; they eat fatty acids and proteins. And when they do eat that, they emit these odorous chemicals, and that's what smells.
I never think of my hands as being particularly like odor
I know,
zones.
right? Yeah, me either. I never thought that, but apparently your hands do have apocrine glands.
Is that because
like
I mean, I guess we wash them enough, or we wipe them off, or they're just not moist zones. So in terms, they might sweat, sure, but you don't wipe off your feet a bunch. They just are
right.
in the sock, in the shoe all day.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to imagine if you're sweating and it's the contents of the sweat that the bacteria feed on. But yeah, you wipe your hands all the time, and if you're wiping those contents off on towels or on your pants or on whatever, then the bacteria are continually losing what they have to eat, and the bacteria are getting wiped off as well.
So what made you what made you think of this?
Because actually, ever since I've been working from home and not essentially just staying in my apartment for multiple days, because of the thing that you mentioned, the rumor that deodorant with the active ingredient of aluminum can, lead to Alzheimer's. That's the rumor that I heard anyway. I was like, well, I'm not coming into contact with any other human being. I'm not leaving my apartment. I don't want Alzheimer's, so I just won't wear deodorant unless I need to. And then I started to stink really bad, and I was like, oh man, body odor is... I've never really stunk before because I've always worn deodorant or antiperspirant.
Which you got stinky where you could smell yourself?
Yeah, and I could smell myself, and I was like, wait, this is bad. And but then I persisted, and it was fascinating to me how different body odor can smell over time.
This is kind of gross. I like
it. It is kind of gross, but it's also, like, I thought it was gross too, but it's also really interesting because I noticed that sometimes it would smell, just purely unpleasant, just bad, and I would never want to be around another person when I smelled like that. Well, let me also clarify, just because other people are listening to this, that I'm not an unhygienic person, and I don't just casually walk around stinking all the time. If I have to interact with anyone else,
no. I don't really.
I'm clean, and I wear deodorant.
I guess I know that about you, so yeah.
Right, just make that clear. But almost in kind of an experimental sort of way, after I noticed this, I was like, what? What I was thinking, what causes this variety of smells, and I was just fascinated by the sheer variety. I would think that each kind of person has their own unique smell, and their body chemistry generates their special kind of body odor. But what I discovered is that within one person, you can have many different kinds of body odor. Sometimes it can just smell kind of bad, just unpleasant. Sometimes it smells like food, and doesn't smell that bad. And if you were to smell it not knowing it was body odor, you'd be like, oh, what you cooking? And which is kind of gross to think about, right?
That would bother me to go, oh no, that's just my smelly roommate.
Yeah, like if I like wafted some air from under my arms into a jar and closed it, and then said, okay, what food is this? And I opened it, and you were like, let's see, that's
it's like burgers.
Chili dogs.
Yeah.
And I would be like, nope, that's my armpits, and you would gag.
That would make me gag, and the idea, even though chili dogs is like a perfectly pleasant smell, yeah, it should not be associated with the armpits.
Right.
And that would just that the association of smells. I'm curious about two factors that I know nothing scientifically about, but I've heard. First of all, that we don't evaluate our own like emissions that well, part of that's contingent upon the smell of change, or the change of smell, in order to identify we quickly grow accustomed to a smell. So if someone lives near some smelly like paper plant
landfill.
Or a landfill, they stop smelling pretty quickly, but someone new to the environment smells it really, it's like, oh, this is awful. So body odor, I feel like you running a test just by yourself is very difficult to do because that factor.
That's a good point, and that was something I considered I was actually like, when I was running this experiment, I was like, okay, I don't think I smell bad, and I need to go pick up lunch now, but am I just acclimated to the smell? And if I go pick up lunch, people are going to be looking at me really weird because I stink, and then I'll be like, I don't want to chance this and put on deodorant. But like the fact that the smell changes and I notice it over time suggests, well, that actually contributes to my observation that the smell is actually changing. It's not just that, I'm acclimated. If it was just me acclimating, then I wouldn't be able to detect the smell after days. But it changes so I can detect that.
The change of smell is not just a sliding scale, you're saying, either. It's not like it just gets a little worse and a little worse and a
No,
little
no,
worse.
it's not. It's a different smell.
Different smell profile. That is
Yeah, it's not a
bizarre to
strength.
me.
It's a different smell. I encourage you to stop wearing deodorant for a while and try it.
I mean, I'm in a position to do that. I think we all
Exactly.
are. Like, this might be the time.
So
if there's a time to do it, let's try it out.
I recommend everyone stop wearing deodorant, antiperspirant, just for a few days and try it out.
In fact, the idea is odd to, like, if I'm stuck at home, why am I getting out and putting on deodorant?
Right.
Like,
Well, that's kind of what my thought, because you have to you have to go buy deodorant, and if it's not being used,
and it could be harmful. Yeah.
Right. But actually, that rumor has not been confirmed. Like, there's actually no confirmation of that I could find. Apparently, that's not necessarily true. That it causes Alzheimer's is not confirmed. So I think that's a danger that you don't have to quite worry about so much.
Right. I don't worry about it, even though, I mean, I guess in the back of my mind, but I still put on deodorant and antiperspirant. So
I've always just used the word deodorant. I never used the phrase antiperspirant, even though I know there's a difference between the two. Like you were right on that. Deodorant just is basically a perfume. Antiperspirant has a compound that essentially clogs those apocrine gland pores. It keeps it from secreting that sweat.
And when it is an antiperspirant, it's always a deodorant and antiperspirant. So that's why the perfume or whatever, this nice smell, it just isn't in competition as much with the what is it?
Apocrine. Apocrine. I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
Apricot grossness. Yeah.
Yeah, apricots on your arms. So, what do you think causes the variety of smells between or within one person?
I mean, I imagine diet. Your own outside of your the blanket term, like chemical makeup.
Yeah.
I mean, people obviously sweat at different rates. And then I imagine diet's huge. Like, I mean, you think of Indian curry. Like, if there's something with a particular spice that seems to seep out quick, or in a pungent way.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know.
Yeah, so you're right. Diet's a big one, and stress level. So your blood chemistry, your hormone levels can affect your body odor as well. So if you're really stressed, you can actually have a distinctly different smell, or if you're aroused, you can smell different. So this might lead into the whole pheromone discussion.
Pheromones.
But yeah, your body chemistry actually does change what the smells are, because it changes what fatty acids or proteins are secreted. And so the bacteria are actually eating something different. The chemicals that they emit are different, and so it causes a different smell. And you're exactly right. Like, that's one of the things when I was researching this that was noted, is that Indian people like have a distinct body odor that smells like curry because they eat lots of curry. And I've noticed that. Like, I had some Indian friends in high school, and like I went to this guy's house, and like it just smelled like curry. He smelled like curry.
The house, they almost sits heavy in the room.
Curry everywhere, yeah. And it was, it's body odor. Now here's another fact as well, that I guess could. It's not controversial. It's just a fact, right? Like, different races actually smell different. And have
that should
different,
surprise no one, really.
Have different levels of body odor, like diet aside. So the fact that Indians eat lots of curry, and some of that some of that food material ends up being secreted and emitted as an odor. That's one thing. But even if we all ate the same foods, we would still have differing levels of body odor because the races have different concentrations of the apocrine glands. So this is something I wasn't aware of, but when I read it, it makes sense because let's see if you can guess.
No.
Yeah, let's see if you can guess.
No.
Which race has
No.
the least? Which is the least stinky race?
I'm not. Oh, I'm not playing that. I don't know. I have no idea.
Come on. All right,
Asian people.
You're right. Ding, ding, ding. That's correct. Asians are typically known as the least stinky race because they have the lowest concentration of apocrine glands. And like we went to Japan together, and actually that's something that I kind of noticed is that you would think when we went in the middle of summer in July, we were crammed on these tiny cars full of people, and it actually didn't smell that bad.
No, it didn't. I mean, I rarely caught whiffs of BO, and not that I was thinking about it that much, but
but
you'd think
you
it
can
happened
imagine
more with that many people and that close of quarters. So.
in the hot summer with everyone sweating.
Yes,
you would expect that to be a horribly stinky environment, like a locker room or something.
I wonder if that's why I pulled. I don't know why I said Asians, to be honest, but
maybe.
Yeah.
Actually, here's another interesting thing that I read. It's just a rumor, apparently, but it's at some point in the past having body odor was enough to prevent Japanese men from being allowed into the military.
Whoa.
Because it was so unusual and signified impurity. And, it's a largely Buddhist background, and they're all about purity. And so having bad body odor was enough to keep them from being admitted into the military.
So imagine they judge body odor. We all kind of judge body odor, probably more than we should. And Asian cultures might do that even more harshly. So. Yeah.
Well, just because it's more noticeable and unusual.
Right.
So actually, I don't know if you remember this brief moment, but when we were in Japan, we were on the trains, and middle of summer, the doors opened, and this group of Europeans got on the train. I think they were overweight too, and they were sweaty, and there was this one Japanese woman who was standing near the door and apparently immediately got a big whiff of body odor and started coughing and put her hands over her face and turned into the corner and just stayed with her head faced into the corner.
So dramatic.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that. So when you said it was I'm remembering this. It was funny. We were trying not to
really
laugh.
Funny.
It was such an overt display of disgust.
So after saying that, let me ask you the question: which races do you think are the most stinky?
That one I'm even less comfortable answering. No, tell me. Why don't you tell me? Seriously.
European and African people tend to have more apocrine glands, and so they're more likely to have more body odor.
And so are the apocrine glands, do they manifest differently? Is it possible that if you find the smelliest Asian and the least smelly African, and you were to so their apocrine glands are actually an overlap, comparable, whatever.
I'm sure.
Do they smell the same?
Oh, smell the same?
Well, and they had a similar diet too. So trying to remove variables. I'm saying.
Yeah, right. That's a good question. I imagine that kind of what I said, where everyone has their own special little smell, is probably closer to accurate. You have to imagine that people have generally similar but not identical hormone balances, and their diets vary. But like you're saying, we're trying to eliminate that variable.
With the apocrine gland, you're just talking about severity, basically, and not the actual So it wouldn't be possible to smell someone's shirt and go, "That's an Asian." You could make a guess on if it's a lighter smell, maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
But
you're probably right. I mean, again, you might be able to detect a fishy smell because Asians eat more seafood, or Japanese people eat more seafood.
So you're just you're making
Indian.
a bunch of guesses
but again,
about
that's a diet-based
thing.
one.
Yeah,
I think you're right, at least based on the science that I've seen. The only difference between the races is the concentration of apocrine glands. So, by smelling a shirt, you wouldn't be able to tell that. So it's just they have different numbers of the glands.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
That's
one
interesting.
one other interesting fact too. Lest I be considered racist, I also want to be considered sexist as well. Men also are stinkier than women, which is probably stating the obvious. So men, and it's not necessarily because they have more apocrine glands, but it's because they sweat more readily than women.
So
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 if you're in a room and the room is 60 degrees and you start cranking the temperature up, men will sweat 1 degree sooner than women will. And so you sweat more, then the bacteria get fed.
do we have
and
more
sooner.
sweat glands? Or are they bigger?
Neither one of those, at least as far as I could find. That may be the case, but I don't have that. It's just that we sweat sooner. We're more sensitive to heat.
Okay, so we might have the same amount of glands. They just are their switch is turned on sooner. Yeah, it's
That's
more
right.
their
Well, it's
sensitivity.
because
Yeah.
apparently that's because men have more upper body musculature and they're insulated more, and so the internal mechanisms in your body that detect your core temperature, turn on quicker, and so your body is signaled to sweat.
That
more
makes a lot of
quickly than
sense.
women.
That makes total sense to me.
And men also have more testosterone levels, and that's fuel for the apocrine glands as well. So.
And it just seems to coincide with the general truth of
Men smell worse. Yeah.
men smell
I mean,
worse, and
Well,
that girls get cold easily. It
That's true,
seems
yeah.
if you just it's anecdotal at this point, but it seems like you could verify that now. Like the reverse, men are hotter, like temperature wise, they get hotter easier. So
right. Oh, I'm pretty sure that's been
oh
studied
sure,
and,
yeah.
and done. So,
But even
yeah,
anecdotally, it's always like girls saying I'm cold, and
Right.
not guys as much. So
right. Yeah, and there are probably cultural considerations too. Not cultural, but no, it is cultural.
Roles,
Differences
yeah.
between men and women as well. Like women are more likely to be concerned with their smell and wear perfume, and generally, men are working more active jobs, just in
or
general.
yeah, the
and
jobs that
more
are
likely to be
active are
sweaty.
more occupied by men. Yeah.
Right, and so they'll be sweatier, and so that all probably contributes to that. So if you're a European dude, then you probably stink.
Oh, poor European dude. Sweaty Europeans.
Yep. I
Well,
think that's about a good place
I think
to
it's a great
wrap it up.
Yes, it is, and I'm glad we have this smooth exit. We've really, we
Yeah.
nailed the entrance, and we seem to be doing just as well at the end.
Yep. Wear your deodorant, folks.
Did it?
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Stopping. Bye.